able to go on without Shimon. That's such a good guy.
Oh, well, he's right. Okay, so yesterday we learned about the covet that was done for Chizkiah Melech, and they set up a yeshiva by his caver, and it's a shaila if it was 3 days, 7 days, or 30 days. Rashi says that they didn't set it right. I think Tosha says it. They didn't set it up right on top of his caver because it would be loy l'rosh. They set it up at least 4 amos away. The Arishonim would argue, like we go to Kivrei Tzadikim, and we say Tehillim right there by a hesped in front of the mace. We're saying Divrei Torah. So the Nemuki Yosef argues in Rashi, and he says whenever it's done l'kavod hameis, that's not loy l'rosh. Loy l'rosh would mean if you sit the bimah v'shedra on the kaver, you sit in the Gemara on the kaver. But if it's le'ilu nishmas the mace, it's directly for the mace. That wouldn't be considered loy l'rosh. Zok the Gemara weiter. Tana Rabbanan. The kavod asu loy b'moisa. They did great kavod for Chizkiah Melech. Zokt the Gemara. Chizkiah Melech Yehuda sheyotzu lefanov shloishim v'shisha elef chalutze kesef. There were 36,000 people who raised kriya for him. Rashi says shakoru bigdeim acheniru kisveim. They raised kriya so badly that they actually exposed. See, in this case, exposed is the right word. They actually exposed their shoulders. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Amal Rab Nechemya. They did that in front of Achav. Many people raised kriya in front of Achav as well. Tosha speaks out. It might not have been the tzaddikim who did that, but he had enough followers who liked him. Ella, what was special about Chizkiah is shehenichu sefer Torah al mitasai. They put a sefer Torah on his mitah, v'amru, and they said, Kayim zeh masha kosav b'zeh. This nifter was Mekayim, all of the Torah, all that's written in the Torah. Frank Gemara, why is that such a great covet? Well, idna nami avdin and hachi. We do that nowadays. So it can't be such a unique cover that was only done for Chizkiah Melech. So we don't quite do that. Afukim afkina, we take out the Sefer Torah, but anuchi loy manchina, we don't actually place the Sefer Torah down on the meat of the nifter. V'bayisema anuchi nami manchina. Even if you want to say that you're allowed to put a Sefer Torah on the meat of a nifter, but kayim loy amrinon, we don't say kayim zeh mashakosav b'zeh. That's a very unique level of praise that was only done for Chizkiah Melech because of his great tzidkis, and as Tosha told us on Amud Beis, that Chizkiah was unique because in his times people were so learned, every woman, every child was a baki in Hilchos Taharos. Amar Rabba bar bar Chana. So we could call Chizkiah the education king. And there's always governments that want to take, or presidents that want to take credit for improving education. Nobody improved education in the world like Chizkiah Melech did. Amar Rabba bar bar Chana. Havazilna b'hadei Rabbi Yochanan. I was walking behind Rabbi Yochanan, lemishol shmaitza, to ask him a shayla, but ki have a ayel beisakise, but he was on the way to the bathroom. Normally you would say TMI, too much information, but from Gedolei Olam we learn even from these things. And I was asking him a shayla. Loi pashatlon, he wouldn't answer our question until he came out of the washroom, of course, and washed his hands. And umanach tefillin, and he put on his tefillin. In those days, they wore tefillin the whole day. Umavarach, and he made a bracha on the tefillin. And then v'hadu amalon, then he answered our question. Afilu kayim amrina. You'll even say nowadays kayim zeh mashakosav b'zeh. But what they said for Chizkiah, which was the highest level, was limed loy amrinan. We don't say that he learned the Torah. We say that he did the Torah. Back to Gemara, how could that be? How could you tell me that limud is the greatest level? It's higher than kiyum. V'yamar mar gadol limud Torah shal limud maybe l'maisa. If the only reason why limud is so great is because it leads to maisa, so clearly the ultimate is maisa. So if the ultimate is maisa, how could you tell me that for everybody else we'll say kiyum, but for Chizkiah they also said limud. Limud is only subordinate to maisa. The godless of Chizkiah, they didn't just say he learned Torah, they say he taught Torah. Teaching Torah is even greater than Maisa because it leads to many people being Mekayim mitzvahs. By teaching the public, you're leading many people to be Mekayim mitzvahs. So the order is Limud Torah is level 1. Level 2, higher than that, is Maisa, being Mekayim Torah, and level 3 is being a catalyst for other people to learn Torah, to be Mekayim Torah by teaching them Torah. Tosfos has a very interesting twist on this situation that's exactly the opposite of what it is. And Tosfos learns, the way we learn to Gemara, it just happens to be that this story happened when they were following in Rabbi Yochanan into the washroom. But the She'iltis, as Tosfos quotes it, makes the story much more relevant because the She'iltis is garish a little differently in our Gemara. It says, and I'm going to read the She'iltis is Girsha in our Gemara. Amar Rabba Barbachana hava izilna ba'adei Rabbi Yochanan l'mishul shmaitza ki hava ayla beis hakisei. And v'ava ina minei milsa le'pashad lan adamashi yadei u'manach tefillin u'mavarach. V'hadar amalon, period. The rest of it, afilu kaim, that had nothing to do with it. The raya was from his actions. The raya was from Rabbi Yochanan's actions. Before Rabbi Yochanan was willing to teach us Torah, he first put on tefillin and he made a bracha, which means he paskin that his Maisa Rav paskin that his Maisa mitzvah of putting on tefillin and making a bracha precedes teaching Torah, and that was the raya from here. You have a raya from Rabbi Yochanan that kiyum is greater than teaching Torah. So the Gemara answers a huge chiddush of Tosfos. There's a difference between learning Torah and teaching Torah. And in fact, learning Torah is greater than Maisa. True. But teaching Torah is after Maisa. Exactly the opposite of how we understood the conclusion until now. So before he was willing to teach Torah, he first had to be Mekayim Torah. He had to do the mitzvahs that were incumbent upon him, such as putting on the tefillin and making the bracha. And only then was he willing to teach. So Golad Limud and the Maisa is Limud comes first. So Limud is the level 1. Level 2 is Maisa, and I'm sorry, so it's the opposite. Teaching is level 1, but more important than teaching is being Mekayim the mitzvahs, and more important than that is learning the mitzvahs. So you see the opposite conclusion based on the way the She'iltis understood it. Okay, Zok to Gemara weiter. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Ma'idich said, it says in the pasuk, Ashreichem kol zoyrei al kol moyim. Fortunate are the people who plant al kol moyim. This is the pasuk in Yeshayahu. Ashreichem zoyrei al kol moyim. What's going to be their schus? So first we'll have to see what this great schus of zoyrei al kol moyim is, and then the schar for that is mishalchi regel hashor v'chamor, and we'll have to see what that schus, what that reward is. So Zok to Gemara, whoever is Isaac Sai in Torah and Sai in Gemilas Chasadim, Zoicha l'nachlas shnei shvatim. He'll be Zoicha to have the nachla of 2 shvatim. So now let's see how Zoyrei al Kol Moyim refers to Torah and Gemilas Chasadim. Shenemer Ashreichem Zoyrei, Zriya planters. The Ein Zriya el tzedakah. Zriya planting always refers to tzedakah. Shenemer, like it says in the pasuk, Ziru lachem l'tzedakah, plant for tzedakah, v'katru l'fi chesed, and you'll harvest l'fi chesed. So you see the word Zriya is associated with chesed. And then it says Zoyrei al kol moyim. So what's moyim? Vein moyim el Torah, as we know, shenemer haykol tomei l'chulamai. So that's how we know that the schos, the mitzvahs, that the Torah is referring to, in Yeshayahu, that the Navi is referring to, is the schus of tzedakah and the schus of Torah. And v'zoicha, what is his reward? L'nachal shnei shvatim, which 2 shvatim are we talking about? Zoicha l'chila ki Yosef, zoicha to a chuppah, like Yosef had, tichsev bein Peiros Yosef, v'nois tzada alei shor. And Yosef when he walked around with this chuppah over him, and the Rasha is Myrich as why that's such a special thing. But V'zoichi is also Zoicha L'nachlas Yisachar, the benefits of Yisachar, the Chsiv Yisachar Chamor Gara, which is his knowledge in Torah, or it could be referring to his land. Let's see Rashi. Aser b'nichsen. Chamor Gara means he was very wealthy. So he's Zoicha to the beautiful chelik that Yosef had, honor the chila of Yosef, and also to the land, the great wealthy land that Yisachar had as well. That's what Zoicha do, and that is Mishal Cheregel Ashor B'Chamor, Ashor referring to Yosef, and the Chamor referring to Yisachar. But it is to Amri, the reference to Yosef and to Yisachar have other benefits associated with them. Yosef is oivav neifel l'fanav. His enemies will collapse in front of him. Ki Yosef, as Yosef benefited from the chsiv, bahem with the karnei sha'or, karnei re'im karnov, bahem amim yinagach yachtav afsayarts, which means he'll be able to eliminate his enemies. And the zoicha levina ki Yisachar. It's not talking about the ashiris of Yisachar. It's talking about his wisdom, his understanding, his insight. The chsiv u'b'nei Yisachar yoydei vina leitim ladas mayasi Yisrael. They knew how to guide Klal Yisrael. They were leaders because they had a wisdom and an intuition. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we were zoicha to finish the first parak of Bava Kama, Arba Avos, V'lineder Hadin Aloch Arba Avos, Hadin Aloch Arba Avos, Hadin Aloch Arba Avos. Okay. We'll talk the Heilige Mishnah in the second parak. Ketzad Haregel Mu'edes Lishbar B'derech Chilucha. So the way Rashi teaches is Ketzad Haregel Mu'edes, that's the question. And the Gemara's answer, or the Mishnah's answer, is L'shaber B'derech Chilucha, to break things as the animal is walking along in its natural course. Now we have a secondary comment. Habehema Mu'edes L'halach Kedarko L'shaber. This is a little bit puzzling, because didn't we just say that? So what is the Tana trying to add with the second comment of Habehema Mu'edes L'halach Kedarko L'shaber? Haisim of Etes. What if the animal was stomping? Or there were rocks shooting out from under the feet of an animal. V'shaver es a kelim, and broke the kelim. Mishalim chati nezek. You only pay chati nezek. Now, these are really two cases wrapped into one. Because Miva'etes, Rashi says, Shinu Hizeh, the told of the Karen. That's a told of Karen. And Karen pays chati nezek. Shroris minata mitach shrokleo is going back to regel. As Rashi says, Afal gav the lav shinuhu elo urchehu, because it's normal for when an animal walks sometimes to shoot up stones. Afilu ochi chati nezek, nevertheless, you only pay chati nezek. V'suloi, why? As we learned earlier, the hilchos of gemir lahu. It's a halacha l'moshe Messinai that even though tzureiroi should be chayiv and ganzen, you only pay chati nezek, and it's still a din of mammon. But Rishus HaNizek, of course, the case of Miva'etes has to be in Rishus HaRabim, because it's Karen. And the case of Oyutzuros Menach Medach Shregleo has to be Rishus HaYochid, because that's when you're chayiv for regel, Rishus HaNizek. Okay, gewaltig. So Vishavish HaKelim Mishalom Chati Nezek. Now we'll try a new case. Darsa ala kli v'shavrosai. It stomped on the keli, and the keli broke. And then v'nafal al kli, and one of these shards, one of the broken pieces of the keli that it directly crushed, shot out and broke a second keli. So it was like a chain reaction. V'shavrei. So al arisha mishalom nezek shalem, because that's standard regel. Al achmer mishalom chati nezek, because that is chati nezek tzurz. Hatanagoylin muadin lahalach kedarkan. Tanagoylin are muadin to walk on their path. Ulashaber, and to break things. So that would be directly breaking things with their legs. That would be standard regel. But what about how you dalil kosher baraklo? If they had some type of string tied to their legs, and as they're walking, that string swung around and broke something. I show you mahadis, or it was jumping. The chicken was jumping around. Umishaber as a kalim, and broke kalim. Mishalom chati nezek, that would only pay chati nezek. And again, Rashi explains the Dalil anu tzroiros to the Befarish Begemar the Ajaduye. The Dalil is not its direct koyach. It's swinging its the little string that's around its leg. That's not a direct. That's chatzin tzroiros. And hitis nami kigoin shehitis vatzroidoi shavros again. It's the derech for a chicken to dance around, but it wasn't speaking where the animal directly damaged the keli. Rather, it's jumping around, caused something to shoot out, caused a projectile to shoot out and break a keli. So it's chatzin as it trains. So basically, the Mishnah is telling us different variations of regel and chatzin as service that are all the derech. Right, Tosfos struggles. Why is there a special chiddush in chickens? I think we sort of got the message of how Torah works. So Tosfos sticks in all the way at the bottom, the very bottom. Tosfos, Darsha Lakli, you would have thought that it's different. So it's not the case of the chickens. The case where an animal crushed a keli and the broken keli shot out as a projectile and broke another keli. It's just a variation on what we learned already. Why is it necessary to say it? So I would have thought that this might fall under the category of Karen, and it's not typical. Why? If the animal was able to stomp so strong that not only did it crush a keli, but it also caused a projectile to be launched, and maybe that would indicate maybe that would indicate that was the animal's intention because the animal was angry and wanted to do damage. It's still classified as derech hilucha and it's still considered regel, and therefore b'shus hanizik it's chayiv nezek shalit. Okay, let's turn over onto Daf Yud Zayin Lebeis. So Zok the Gemara. Omer le Ravina l'Rava. Ravina told Rava, Hainu regel, Hainu behema. Right after the Mishnah discusses regel, it says behema is a muad l'shaber derech chinuch. Why did the Tana repeat that line and talk about the case of behema? Is it not an exact duplicate of the first case of regel? Amalei, so Rava answered, no. There's a very big difference. Tana avois v'katani toldois. There's the av malacha, or not malacha, there's the av damage of regel that the Mishnah discusses with an animal crushing something with its legs, with its feet, by stepping on something. And then there's the toilda, as Rashi says, it's not that the animal stood on something, and the animal is muad l'shaber derech chilucha, like brushing against something, like its saddle hitting something, its load hitting something. Those are al toldos. The actual av of regel is when it's the actual foot stomping on something. Zok to Gemara. Okay, so with that logic, let's go to the next clause in the Mishnah. L'minat l'sefer de katani, hashein muedis. I'm sorry, so that's the next Mishnah. That says hashein muedis, and the Mishnah elaborates on when is hashein mued, hashein muedis, and it says habahema muedis. So it has the same format as our Mishnah. There, my obvious whom I told us they're not obvious and told us because both cases we're talking about an animal eating something. So you can't use the same explanation in the second Mishnah discussing Shane as we're discussing here by Regel, because all those cases are talking about an animal eating something, which are the obvious. So my obvious whom I told us Ika. Zakta Gemara. So this question was posed by Ravina to Rava. So Rava answered Ravina for a joke, and he told him, he said, listen, I found for the first Mishnah, so you found for the second Mishnah. Why don't you come up with a teresh for the second Mishnah? But what was the real pshat? What's pshat in the Mishnah of Shein? Why it says Hashein Muedes Lecho, and then the Mishnah repeats it with Habehema Muedes Lecho? The time of my, what's really the reason? Amar Rashi, Tana Shein Dechaya, Tana Shein Debehema. The first Shein that the Mishnah talks about when it says Hashein Muedes is speaking about the Shein of a Chaya, to tell you that even a Chaya has the damage of Shein. The Katana Shein Debehema, and then the Mishnah says Habehema Muedes, which is referring to, of course, a behema eating. why would I make that distinction? Why would I need the Mishnah to tell me that Chaya is also Mechuyev and Shein and not only Behema? Because so Kedaita Chamina v'Shilach is B'Yreiksiv. The pasuk that talks about the Chiyuv of damages for Shein says v'Shilach es B'Yiroi Ubir B'Steacher. So you're sending your animal. Behema in Chayaloi. I would think that a Behema is called B'Yiroi, but not necessarily would a Rashi even says that Be'iroi is the targum of the word behema. So I would have thought that the Torah was only being mechayiv damages of shein for a behema, not for a chaya. And therefore the Mishnah, the Tana felt a need to say a shein mu'edes, meaning even a chaya, and then it says a behema. So Frek Gemara, I don't understand. So Amar Vashi, Tana shein the chaya, v'katana shein the behema. So what's the Kamashmalan? The Chaya B'chlal Behema. When it says V'shilach es Be'iroi, there's a Chiyav Shein for Behema, it includes Chayas as well. And as we know as well, it includes birds as well. Frek the Gemara, if that's the case, Ihachi Hamibayle Lemisne Bereisha. If the main damage of Shein is behema, the Mishnah should first have said that behema mu'edes, and then the second halacha should have been a Shein mu'edes to add chaya into the category of behema. Why would we first talk about chaya when the main case is behema? Dr. Gemara, because hi the osile midrasha chavivale. How does the Tana know that chaya is b'klal behema? Rashi tells us he learned it from a pasuk in Devarim. It says in the pasuk, "Zois habehema shetechelu," when the Torah is discussing the behemoths that we're allowed to eat. Umefarish basrei ayol tzvi achmor, and then the first items on the list are actually chayas. So you see that included in the heading of behema are also chayas included. So oibazoizak to Gemara, since it's chovav to the Tana to highlight this drasha that a chayas b'chal behema. The Mishnah mentions Chaya first. Correct the Gemara, Ihachi, if that's the case, Reisha Nami Lisni Ahi the like Siva Bereisha. In the Reisha as well. In the Reisha, well, when it talks about Regal in our Mishnah, it should have said first Behema Mu'edes, and then it should have said Regal Mu'edes. It should have done the same as before. It should have put the Tolda first. So to Hasam Idi V'Idi, obviously. But in case of a Shein, whether it's a Chaya eating or whether it's a Behema eating, they're both Avos. I want to know which Av the Tana prefers to mention first. So his preference is Hach the Otzi Le Midrasha Chavivale. The one that's learned through a drasha, which is Chaya, is more Chaviv, and that's why Chaya is presented first. But as by Regel, the first case, the Regel is the Av, and the Behem is Tolda. Hacha Shavik Av, the Tani Tolda. Here you want to suggest that the Tana should talk about a Tolda before he talks about a Nav. So therefore, even though the Tolda might be a Chiddush that's Chaviv to him, but the Av would always come from it. Iba Yisema. Or I can offer another reason why by in our Mishnah, why it first starts off with Regel and not with Behema, even though Behema would have been the Chiddush that the Tana wants to highlight. I did Salak me Regel, since we just finished talking about Regel in the last parak, as Rashi quotes on the Mishnah Daf Tezvav Mebeis, it says a Regel Muedes, and it doesn't say a Behema Muedes. So there, a Pochas Beregel, the Tana was continuing on from the conversation that we had in the last pair. But by Shein, you don't have that, and that's why by Shein, I did Chavivi, it discussed Shein Chaya first. Tana Rabbanan, Behema Mu'edes Lahalach Kedar. A Behema is a Mu'edes to walk in its normal fashion, Ulashaber, and to break things, and that is Regel. Ketat, Behema Shenichnas Ol Chatzar Nizik. A Behema that came into the Chatzar Nizik. V'zika begufa derech hilucha. It bumped into something as it's walking and broke it, or ubesayir derech hilucha. Its hair got caught up in something and broke something, or bu'ukav shalal its saddle, ubeshliv shala is its load, uberprumbia shebapia, it had some type of bite in its mouth that could have damaged something, or ubezug shebetzavar, or the ring around its neck, or v'chamor b'masoi, or a chamor with its load. All these things are misalim nezek shalem. They all pay nezek shalem because that's regal and it's derech. Sumcha says, tzroirois, which we know is chati nezek tzroirois, v'chazir, or a chazir shoyanever ba'ashba. And Rashi says a chazir was poking around in the ashba, and something shot out from when he was poking around, similar to the chati nezek tzroirois. The hizik and the damage, mishalim nezek shalem. So Sumchas Shita is, he argues on the ruling Shita of Chati Nezek Tzoros, and he holds even Tzoros pays Nezek Shalom. Fact Gemara Hizik Shita. So the Gemara at first doesn't chapter we're talking about Tzoros. It just says Hizik, because at least by the case of Chazir, Shayu Noiver Ba'ashba Hizik, so that's partial, that's regular. Even by the Chazir, it's Hitiz the Hizik. And nevertheless, even though it's Tzoros, Mishalem Nezek Shalom, it pays Nezek Shalom. So the Gemara wants to know, the Mishnah was not discussing Tzoros. So why suddenly did the Sumchus introduce Tzoros and express a dissenting opinion? The Mishnah didn't discuss it. It would be more appropriate for Sumchus to express his dissenting opinion that Tzoros is Chayav Nezek Shalom when the Tana is talking about Tzoros. And then, when he says that only Chayav Chati Nezek, then the Sumchus would come in and present his dissenting opinion. So about Tzoros Mandachar Shemayu. Who's talking about Tzoros? And for the Gemara Chitzura Mechsura. V'hachi Gatani. Tzoros Kir Chayu is Chati Nezek. A regular case of Tzoros, and this we have to add in the Mishnah before Sumchus. An animal walks and it shoots out a stone as a natural result of him walking. The owner of the animal only has to pay the Nizek Chati Nezek. The Chazir Shoyu Never Ba'ashba Hitis, the same case, a case of Tzoros, but this time it's done by a Chazir. The Hizik Mishalem Chati Nezek. And then Sumchus adds in, Sumchus Omer, Tzoros, the Chazir Shoyu Never Ba'ashba Hitis, the Hizik Mishalem Nezek Shalem. So in fact, we have a Machloikis if Chati Nezek Tzoros is Chati Nezek, or if it's Nezek Shalem. Now, Rashi seems to say that when you're talking about this Chati Nezek Tzoros of the Chazir, that it's irregular case of Tzoros. Let's see what Rashi says. Tzoros Kirchayu, Klemer Avagav Kirchayu Lahatis Tzoros, nevertheless Mishalem Chati Nezek, Kitim Mefarish Lakamei, Derech Gemir Lo, V'chein Chazir Anoiver Umatis Tzoros B'choit Moy Avinami Tzoros the Regel. It's like Tzoros of Regel. The whole mashu koichlev v'lagufa kari Tzoros. Since the body of the animal didn't directly damage the kalim, it merely shot out a projectile, and the projectile damage, so it's indirect damage, it's koichai, that's chazin of Tzoros. Tosfos says a chiddush that to me is completely off the charts, and I hope I understand Tosfos properly. Let's read Tosfos together, and maybe I made a mistake in reading it. So I want to look at Tosfos Noiver Ba'ash, very short Tosfos. And Tosfos says, that word in Tehillim, that phrase in Tehillim, Tagaminon, Yiduvrine. So Karsamena, I guess, means poking around in the ashba. And look at what Tosha says over here. V'yavagav the Tanut Tzoros the Regel, even though in the Mishnah, did someone say something?
Karsamena push it to touch Fashnad. You should like even the push it to touch.
Even though the Tana quoted Tzoros the Regel, Ashmeinon Tzoros the Shein the Lahanasoi Ka'avim. The case of Chazir Never Ba'ashba is not regular. He's not walking around. He's poking around in the ashba to eat. That's Shein. So this case of Chazir Never Ba'ashba is a massive chiddush. It's Tzoros the Shein. So I think what Tosfos is saying is making up a whole new thing. I always knew that there was a concept of Chasi Nezek Tzoros by Regel. Tosfos is saying that there's even something called Chati Nezek Tzoros of Shein. If it damaged while it was eating by causing a projectile to shoot, Tosfos is calling that Tzoros the Shein. I think that's a big chiddush, especially since the damage isn't because the item is being consumed. The damage is because due to his eating, it shot out a projectile. So that should also be categorized as regel. Shane is only if the animal consumes something. I think that's what Tosfos says, unless all Tosfos means to say it's Torah to Shane. Right, the Hanasik of it. No, Tosfos learning it's mamish in the category of Shane, and the litmus test is he enjoying it? So if he bought the animals eating for his Hanasoi, that makes it Torah to Shane. I don't know exactly how to package it, but that's what Tosfos seems to be saying. Okay, let's see the Halakha Gemara Vayt.
In the article, it says even it comes from a thing that he has a nu. Usually, when the behemoth walks, it's not a hanu. It doesn't go for a hanu. Even though it still has the halucha from Troyes, like told the
right. So that's right. So that's a very big chiddush because lemaisa the rock shooting is derech halucha. It was caused from something that an animal normally does, but the rock shooting was not lahanas. So you see a chiddush in Tosfos that in order for it to be shaying, it doesn't necessarily have to mean the damage is lahanas. It has, as long as the hanas was a catalyst to cause the damage, that would also be tzuras to shaying. Yeah, in the Chachamim. Okay, shkoyach. Does the article say it on his own, or it just says Tosfos?
No, it says from Tosfos.
Okay, shkoyach. Okay, zok the Gemara weiter. We're up to the Tana Rabbanan, I believe. Tana Rabbanan. Tanagolim shahaya mafrichen mimakim lamak. They were birds that were flying around. Vishavru kelim bichnafeim. Rashi tells us that directly hit a keli, their wings banged into a keli, and it damaged the keli. So that clearly is regal. Mishalom nezek shalom, they pay nezek shalom. But what if they didn't directly damage the keli? Rather, beruach shebekanfeim. Like everybody knows that when a helicopter lands, there's so much wind blowing underneath it. So when a bird flies, there's also wind, not as much as a helicopter. But let's say that wind knocked something over and caused damage, that would be like tzuras, because it's koichai, it's not gufay. Mishal and chati nezek.
When did you ever see a tarnagol fly? Oh, yeah. Tarnagol don't fly.
Well, they do flap their wings. They take jumps and they take leaps, and while they leap, they do flap their wings, and that creates a wind.
Short distances they fly.
Yeah. That should be the eagle.
That makes more sense because a bird flying high, he's not near any kalim, but a chicken's always on the ground, so whenever he flies, he actually is near kalim. So Simcha Zaymer nezek shalom. Simcha says, as we learned, that chati nezek tzuras is no such thing. It's nezek shalom tzuras. Tanya Yidich, we had a different brisa. Tanagoyim show you mahatzin al gabi isa. Tanagoyim that were jumping around on the dough, val gabi Paris or on Paris. The tinfu, and they either made the Paris dirty, and I guess they couldn't be used, or nikru, or they pecked into it. In either case, mishalom nezek shalom, because that's a direct gufa. But a hell will offer a tzuras. But what if they shot up offer a tzuras and caused damage indirectly? Rashi's mina arts isa, so they were on the ground and they shot dirt onto the isa, and that's how it damaged it. Then misham and chati nezek. Again, it's koichai and it's chati nezek of tzuras. Some chazaymer nezek shalom, and some chazolds there's no such thing as chati nezek tzuras. It's nezek shalom. Tanya idich tanagol shoyim afriach mimakim lamak. A tanagol that was flying from place to place. V'yotzor ruach mitachas knofav v'shivra sakelim mishalom chati nezek. So stomach Rabbanon, you would pashto say that this brisa seems to go according to the Rabbanon, who holds of chati nezek tzuras. Amar Rabba Zakrava, and that's how the Gemara remains. Now Rabba wants you to understand the logic behind Sumchis and the logic behind the Rabbanon, and understand their positions. And right now the Gemara doesn't yet know that this is a halacha l'Moshe Messina. Rabba is under the assumption that there's a svara to what they're saying. So Zakar Bishlama Sumchis, I can understand why you're chayiv nezek shalom. Kasavar koyach kedufayda. He holds an halacha. Anything that you do with your koyach should be just like something that you did with your guf, and therefore for chati nezek tzuras you pay nezek shalom because it was the koyach of the meima. Rabbanon, why would Rabbanon say chati nezek? Where does that come from? Ike gufayda. If they hold that koichek gufay kulay nezek boy l'shal. They should be moeded to sumchus, and there should be a full payment for chatzi nezek tzroros. The lavka gufay dami, and if they hold koichek is lavka gufay, then chatzi nezek nami loy l'shlam. Then why should they pay anything at all? It's either all or nothing. What's the justification for only paying chatzi nezek? Then Rava clarified, which means my ikar adin, they should be chayiv 100% of the damages for tzoros. But the chatzi nezek tzoros hilchos a gemir law. So the default is that it should be chayiv nezek sholet. It's not a knas, it's mamona, like we learned earlier. It's a case of mamona. And since it's a case of mamona, there's a gzeres hakos of halacha l'moshe Sinai that you don't pay nezek sholet. And if you remember, it was this anomaly of chatzi nezek tzroros, which is mamona, yet it doesn't pay nezek sholet, is why the brisa that said, what's a litmus test to know if a payment is knas or moment? The litmus test is up to brisa. If you pay more than the damage, if you pay more than the damage, that's called knas. Mashma, that if you paid less than the damage, it won't be a knas. And that was a raya the Gemara wanted to bring. That chatzi nezek, mamanu, and not knas. So the Gemara said no. What the brisa means to say is only if you pay exact value the damages of mamana, whether you pay more or whether you pay less, it's still a knas. So the Gemara asked, why didn't the Mishnah say that? Why did the brisa say, unless you pay exactly the amount of the damages, it's knas? Rather, the brisa said, if you pay more than the damages, it's knas. The teretz is because of chatzi nezek tzroros, where you pay less than the full damage, yet it's not a knas. And that's why the brisa that discussed the litmus test for knas said that it's only for sure a knas if you're paying more than the damages. But if you're paying less than the damage, it's possible that it's knas if it's the chatzi nezek of keren, but if it's the chatzi nezek of tzroros, in fact, it's mamon. Because koichek gufa. Amar Rava said, Rava uses Zov as an interesting litmus test to determine if it's regular or if it's only koyach of regular. Kol shebezov tamid, if the Zov's contact with an item would be mitama the item, then b'nizak and mishalom nezek shalom. So then, if it was a similar case of regel, where there's a direct touching, there would be a chiv of nezek shalom. That's regel. And kol shebezov tar, in a case where the Zov would be tar because it wasn't directly touching something, which is chatzi nezek tzroros. And the typical example would be, Rashi suggests, if a Zov touches something, it becomes tamei. But if a Zov takes a rock and throws it at something, that item would not become tamei. So that is the litmus test. If it becomes tamei, which means the Zov is touching it directly, that's tzroros, that's gufay. But if it's merely koichai, which is something that the Zov would throw a rock at, and therefore wouldn't be tamei, it wouldn't be chayiv nezek shalom, that would fall into the category of chatzi nezek tzroros. Beautiful. Zok Gemara for Rava tzroros asher lashmina. When Rava is coming to tell us the lach of tzroros, we have a couple of brises with some and Rabbanan. We already know the lach of tzroros.
But Zov, there's a timus hesed. He doesn't have to touch it.
And I'm happy you brought that up. Zok Gemara loy Rava agala mosheches bekara and kamash malon. Rava actually is talking about hesed. Zok Rashi agala mosheches bekara. Also lashmiyan. That's what he's coming to teach us. The bezov tamei imhocha karen shazov aleh agabe kelim tamei mishum medrash hazov. If a zov is sitting on a wagon, a zov is sitting in a car, and the car drives on top of kelim, and it doesn't mean the airspace, it means its tires touched it, so it actually moved the kelim. It's tamei mishum medrash hazov, like Chaim mentioned.
No, I said something else. There's a difference. There's one merkav and madris that's only if it carries the weight, even if it doesn't touch it. And then even if a Zov jumps here and the I don't know how it's called, the thing shackled and somewhere else, no contact.
Even if the ground vibrated and the
from the vibration, look.
I hear,
Something
I hear.
else moved.
So why the Gemara doesn't mention that I don't know, but the Gemara here is talking about medrash where there's actually a physical contact between the wagon that moved it. Mishum medrash says off. With the zakanami agalo shemach shcha b'karayin. If you had a wagon that was being pulled by an animal, and what happened? Agava Kalim, and it ran over Kalim, and the Kalim got crushed. Kegufa Hava, that's called Guf for Loikatroish. That's not called indirect, and that would pay Nezek Shalom. From Hittis Troish, Matachas Akroin, but if the wheel also caused a projectile to be released, the Bezov Tar, Bezov would be Tar B'chagavno, but the Zakanami, Shori Roish Nino. So I think it's just comparing the Medrashazov to if the Medrashazov caused it to be projected. So there's a chiddush here, not just in Tzoros. The chiddush is that Medrash is also considered Gufay. Okay, gewaltig. So for Rabbi Tzoros, Ashla Shminin Zakmaloi, Rabbi Agala Meshachas Bekar and Kamashmu. Tanya Kava say the Rabbi. We actually have a brisa that supports Rabbi.
Yosy, I think that's not pshat. I think that first Rava says Kol Shemazov Tomeh Ben Azukin means even Hesed, even if he didn't touch it, only through Hesed. That means Tzroimus.
But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says the Bezov Tomeh Im Holcha Karin Shazov Ale Agav Kalim Tomei. So I'm just reading Rashi. See, you have a different shot, but it's not Rashi. What? So we only have a couple of minutes. Let me finish the daf and then we'll discuss this. Tanya Kavos said the Rav. Behema muedes l'shaber b'derech chiluch. A behema is a mued to break their chilucha, which is regular. Okay, tzad. Behema shenichus l'chatzar nizik. V'zika begufa derech chilucha, v'sar derech chilucha, v'ukav shalom, v'shlif shalom, v'prumi shebepiyah, v'zuk shebetzavara, v'chamor b'masoi, v'agola moishachas b'karain, which is Rava's case. Mishalom ezek shalom. Tan Rabbanan. Tanagoyim shei mechatrin b'chevel dli. Tanagoyim, there's a keli that was hanging off a string, and the Tanagoyim were pecking away at it until they broke it. V'nivzek achevel, v'nishbar agli, mishalom nezek shalom. That's nezek shalom as well. That's derech. That's derech. That's called regular. Boy Rava. And even though they didn't directly break the kli, they just broke the rope, which allowed the kli to fall and break. So boy Rava, darsa al kli v'loishav rasa. What if the animal stepped on the keli, but it didn't break it, but it caused it to roll? It rolled somewhere else, and then because of that, it broke in a different place. Maybe it banged into a rock, it fell off, it fell into a hole. Ma, what is Allah? Do you look at what caused the motion to begin? The gufehu, and therefore it's standard regel. You go basar when the keli broke. And when the keli broke, there was no koyach of the animal there. There was no goof of the animal there. It was just the inertia provided by the animal, and therefore u'tzroy ninu, and they only pay chatzi nes. Timshel be the rabba. Let's see if we can bring a guy from rabba. The Omer Rabba said, Zara klima reisha gag. If someone goes up to the top of the roof and he drops a keli down, it's a 10-story building, and then the guy on the 5th story of the building wants to practice his batting skills, and as the keli comes by his window, he hits it with a bat and smashes it. The loch is potter. The person who broke the keli is potter. Why? The keli that he broke with his baseball bat was already broken the moment it was released from the fellow on top of the roof. So you see clearly that you go basar meikara, because we consider it broken the moment it left the guy's hands. So how could Rava have this shaila? Zaktamar, I don't see the problem. The Rabba pshitale, according to Rabba, it's poshut you go basar meikara. The Rabba mibayle, maybe you go basar taberman. Tashma, hidus ene moed, any muad. If a chicken is jumping around, that's not muad. The yashimar is a muad. Frankly, hidus tolkadaitach. We know it's normal for a chicken to jump around. Of course, that's a muad. Elalav, the shaila is hidus vehitis. A chicken was jumping around, and that didn't break something. But the chicken caused a projectile to be launched, and that broke. Maybe that's the machlokes. The Ma'asav Basar Meikar as Linon, and you consider it regel, Ma'asav Basar Taramana as Linon, and therefore it's considered Chati Nezek Shrevis. I just want to get on to Amid Aleph, Zok Gemara Loi. You don't have a raya, and let me just go to Daf Yud Ches Amid Aleph. The Hittis Troiris, it's speaking of Hittis Troiris, Uveflukta, the Sumchus Rabban. It's only in the case of Troiris, and the Machlaik is a Sumchus Rabbanon if Chati Nezek Troiris is Halacha Mashmusinai, or if you're like Sumchus, that it's Nezek Sholem, and therefore it's called a Mud. Okay, we'll stop here, Bez Hashem, and we'll be Mamshech tomorrow. So Chaim, let's discuss again what this issue was with the
Okay, so let me read you the article.
Okay.
Umar of Kalshu Bezav Tom, Koma Sheneshtiv Negila in Intim Azav, Shem Yiga Azav Beoifen Kizei Beduva Tua, right? If it's gonna touch a Adam Kail my Oichu, he tamani b'mage. I have filling the Gial Daduva Acha Shem Yasit means Yazis, it will move Azav Beoifen Kizei Duva Tua, he tamani beheset. It says Beferish. So then on the footnotes it says Kolovus atomish matam b'mage dan shemnogi duva beduva tua udem v'kayim anachu v'ayin duva choitzes by nayim haduva nitme. This is the regular tumah, right? Hazov v'chayim chavayrav zuva nid v'yoledes.
Right. So you're right now at the Havamina. Let's go to the Gemara's Maskana when the Gemara says Rava Karan is coming. He's going to teach us Karan.
Right. So he says. So that's the first thing. So push it. We thought that this is what he says, that even Hesed, and Hesed would be only like Tzroides, right? So then...
Right, Hesed, because he didn't directly touch it.
Right.
Right, so that's good. But then the Gemara said that Rava Agala Mesheches B'Karan Kamash.
One second.
So that's what I want to see.
So even if he's Matam only Behesed, then Zukin, if he was mazik like this, Mishalim Nezik Shulim, and Kolche Bezav Tua, right?
Right.
It's not Negir. Is Afilim Hisit, Benizuk Mishalim Chuti Nezik.
Right. That's good.
But it's
so
not.
Hesed would pay Chati Nezik. Because it was Koichai.
No, but because Azav, it says Kosher Bezav Tumah and Hesed is Tumah b'Nezaken, right? So he's supposed to pay Nezik Shulim.
So again, what does the Art Scroll say? Because the last thing you're reading from the Art Scroll is Hesed would pay Chati Nezek. Didn't you say that?
No. Balabaheim Shal Nezik Shulim. So let me see. So, and now I'm reading the footnote by Nezik Shulim. Hagmuris Svire Achshav Shiruva Medavan Nezukim Lezav Shematame Behesed. She'avim Eino Negayim Mamish Bedova Hatua Imetame Bekach. Ikemoy Kai Nezukim Chayv Abal Mishalim Nezik Shulim Av Im Eina Baheim Negaz Bechayv Etzan Nezik Ele Mazik Al Daidova Acha. Right? So this would be really like Tzroides. Tzroides is not, he's not touching it, right? And it's being nizik.
But the difference is if there's a direct connection. So by Karoin, the animal's not touching it.
Then you want to ask on this. But I don't understand what he's saying. So let me see. נזוק לזוב המתם במאגה, שלמדני לאל שבעל בחיים להזיק אף במאני בא נגס בו איוש בחיים צונס, כי למזיקו בעיקר שלהו כדוימה, ולזוב אין המתם במאגה בדרך זי, ואוהד שתמה במאגה אין מייחדס לזוב. מדיע גמול המדם נזוק דווקא לזוב לא לתמת אחד, אלא בהכרח שכבון סרשי לתמה בהסת, אז מדע דווקא פן תמה. אלו שהיא מסקה נגיע, שגם בהסת, אין הזוב מטעם אלו אם כאי נגעי בדובה הטועה, על די דובה אחר.
So even through Hesed, there's some type of indirect connection. He's touching, let's say he's stepping on a board that moves, he's stepping on a board that moves a keli. So you had a bigger chiddush. You said even if he jumps on the ground,
even if it's only vibration,
but there's actually a difference. There's actually an important distinction you need to make, because by a zov, let's say it's a big massive rock that he leans on, or it's the ground. That's something that a person doesn't have a koyach. Vibration only means if it's something that's not such a heavy thing, like you stand on the board, and on the other side of the board there's a keli, so that movement causes it. But if he jumps on the ground and there's vibration like an earthquake, I don't know if that would be tamei.
Yeah, I know.
The Gemara has a concept of even. There's the concept of even something which is not tamei v'hesed. That's such a big thing that a person standing on it wouldn't move it.
The reason is because maybe I know for sure. How do I know B'chlal from Timus Hesed? The first time we learned Timus Hesed, but there's a gewalt. It's Chanukah. The shale is Lamazugen even there was Chesumah Shel Kohen Gudel in the it's a Tosfos. I think Tosfos asked the question, right? Lamazugen it was Menach. The oil was Menach, but the Goyim have a Timus Hesed. Right, and even they didn't touch it. Only from Timus Hesed there would be metame. So Tosfos answered it was buried in the ground, and they found it in the hole. So there.
So how do you see that Timus Hesed doesn't mean that they moved it? They stood on something that caused it to move.
So even vibration. Vibration.
What does vibration mean? Maybe vibration means that it's on something that you stand on that causes it to move. Because I know that we had it many times that even if you hold a tumor hesed matama, I think it's called the Evan Amesis. If it's a big rock, if it's a big boulder and you're on it, about that wouldn't be tumor hesed because you don't have the koyach to make such a thing move. I think vibration means if it's on an object that you stand on it so it causes it to move. So there is some type of indirect contact.
He says, that's
right. And Rashi says that.
Yeah.
Really, we need to brush up our knowledge on Zov. If something's on the ground and the Zov jumps on the ground and causes like a mini earthquake, like sometimes you're sitting in your house and a big truck drives by, and you actually feel a rumble, right? Would that be metame by Azov? I'm not sure if it would be.
So the Gemara Kasha, I don't understand what the Kasha is now. So he says, so you want to tell me that Ruv is saying Tzroiris? He says no.